care package inbound.
I want to hit on this just a little bit further, not too deep, because, you know, there's a whole bunch that goes into the flight, fight, or freeze response. I mean, you know, you've got adrenaline, there's all kinds of chemicals. We're just trying to cover the basics. You know, the hippocampus, remember in the beginning, whenever I said in the emotional brain, there's two parts, the amygdala and the hippocampus. The hippocampus is what records memories. Have you ever seen a toddler, when he first burns his hand? For the next, 2 weeks, every time they walk through the kitchen past the stove, they start walking sideways, going hot, 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 and putting their hands up, you know. Well, it's because the hippocampus remembered what it learned, that that's hot and it can hurt you. Same thing with the veteran, you know, with PTSD. He hears the helicopter and his body immediately reacts. Why? Because that sound is associated with trauma. So boom, we react. I mean, obviously it doesn't have to be a helicopter. That's just an easy example for me to use, you know. If something reminds them of their trauma, their body's going to react like it's happening again. Now, how does this play out in marriage with PTSD and us as caregivers? Well, besides the automatic reaction, I mean, some of them are obviously easier to see, you know, if you know that a trauma has to do with an airplane and an airplane flies overhead and they hit the deck and pull you and the kids down with them. Okay, that's an easy one to connect. But a lot of times they're not so easy. They just, you know, explode into this rage and you don't know why. And so this is where we as caregivers have to get very good at how we handle our spouse. And what I mean by that is anger is part of PTSD. It's kind of something that we have to accept. And there is a line of healthy boundaries, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But you as a caregiver have a choice in how this plays out. And this was, man, it was difficult for me to learn. I had to get really creative. You know, I had to, first of all, number one, choose to understand differently. And then number two, I had to choose to act differently. First, I had to get a new way of understanding. Then I realized that it was in my court to create new ways of relating based on that new understanding. So the first thing I did, you know, whenever you want to change something, you have to change it in yourself. So anytime my husband would react to a trigger or something with anger, the best thing for me to do, I learned, was not react to it with anger. And this wasn't easy. You know, I had to figure it out on my own. When I started getting upset, I would have to breathe. I mean, literally count to 10 and breathe. Then when I would respond, I couldn't bring up, you know, other things that would confuse them. I had to say directly on the topic at hand. And then if it started getting escalated, you know, I had to go, hey, I'm going to take a break. I'm not ignoring you. I do want to finish talking about this, but right now our tempers are flaring and I don't want to say something I don't mean. And so I'd, you know, go for a walk or go take a 30-minute break. And while I was taking a break, you know, I'd have to assess the situation. You know, is this something that really has to cause a fight? Kind of pick your battles type thing. Is this something I can live with, or is this something very important that has to be discussed? And then I'd have to decide, why is it threatening me? What fear in me is it triggering? Is it that I'm not being heard? Is it that he's saying that I've done something that I don't think that I've done? You know, I had to really decide on if it was an actual threat. Then if it was something, you know, that I did need to talk about, I needed to proceed with, then I had to look at, am I saying this clearly? It makes sense to me because it's my thought and my perspective, my perception. But am I articulating it well to him? Then I had to look at how I was saying things, my tone, the looks that I was giving him, my body language. And this is something that I would start practicing in the mirror before I had a discussion with him. So I could see exactly how I looked and sounded, trying to see what he was seeing in me that may be triggering it. Next, I realized that my husband was doing all he could. He was giving 100%, and I was giving 100%. Could we both do better? Absolutely. But standing there judging him going, he can do better than this, or I can do better than this, that it wasn't helping anything. And then I had to forgive myself and forgive him. That isn't the same as excusing. Forgiving is not the same as excusing. But whenever you forgive, you let it go. You have room to work from a compassionate standpoint. Always responding to his anger with the knowledge that anger comes from hurt, from being scared. It made it much easier for me to look at the situation and go, okay, this is a PTSD thing. This is him reacting out of pain or fear. So knowing that and understanding how the brain works, it made it very easy to focus strictly on me and my reactions to him. Understanding that the why behind their actions helped me separate my husband from the PTSD, the triggers, and, the altered state of mind in those moments. That helped me more than anything that I had ever read on PTSD, because once I was able to separate them, then I no longer was looking at him as doing things. It was the PTSD doing things, We were able to go back as a team, me and him. And it was kind of like me and him against PTSD then.